Hey folks, Taylor here. Wanted to let you know that today's Total Soccer Show is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, and vegetarians get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/TSS to support the show and see if you qualify. Once again, that's healthiq.com/TSS or mention the promo code TSS when you talk to a Health IQ agent. Now, with that said, on with today's show.
And welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who loves the sound of Chilean piano playing. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. That is accurate. Didn't know it was accurate. Is indeed accurate.
Didn't know you loved a thing until you heard it.
Correct.
So if people don't know, this was Alexis Sanchez's Manchester United announcement, which actually happened, a couple or more days ago. We just haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. He was kind of introduced by the club with, we believe, Alexis himself playing, is it Glory, Glory, Man United?
Yes. I mean, that is not the actual tune, but yes, that is the song that he is playing for Man United fans. I bought so hard on that announcement.
Because you were a skeptic, right? You were an Alexis Sanchez skeptic.
Yes. And I mean, I'm fully aware that it was marketed with that exact intent in mind. Mm-hmm. He does the whole, I can't believe I'm here face that he makes when he exhales. He's got the cold breath coming out. It's all very much designed to tug at the heartstrings and maybe get those who are a little bit uncertain on board. Yep. Worked for me, I have to say. Not proud of it.
I'll be honest, I was a doubter.
Yep.
I was kind of I think I texted you. There's no way that's really
You were a piano doubter.
I was a piano doubter. Yeah.
A piano truther.
A piano truther. So I'm such a piano truther. I Googled Alexis Sanchez piano to see if there's any previous evidence. And there was. In 2014, there was Alexis Sanchez playing piano. I can't remember. Was he singing Right Here Waiting for You?
Yes.
Performing, not singing, playing Right Here Waiting for You. In the same slightly halting, not quite perfect style, right?
Correct.
So it's like he can play piano, but he should stick to his day job.
I think there was, first of all, yes, that's definitely true. For now, we'll see. I think last I heard, most pianists were on $500,000 a week, so there is that. No, I think there was a behind-the-scenes video of it, and I believe I'm correct in saying that there was an actual piano player instructor there, because there was definitely somebody tuning the piano, and then that person was kind of standing next to him as he was playing.
But it wasn't a Westworld situation.
No, it was not. I haven't watched Westworld, but no, it was not, because I'm assuming that involves robots and fake realities, something like that. Yeah, no. I will say the way I first came to believe it was actually him, because I had the same thought. I was we don't actually see him like wide angle playing. We see a lot of close-ups of him. I texted because my wife was at work. I think she was in a class. She couldn't watch the video. I sent her screenshots of his hand positions because she played classical piano for 16 years, and she, I think, texted back, "It's good, but not great. It's probably him."
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Also, she should concentrate in class and not be checking her text.
Yeah, whatever. It was just property? I forget. If her professors are listening, she loves law school.
Meanwhile, I believe the Arsenal video announcing Mkhitaryan was Per Mertesacker had him in a headlock and just sort of dragged him through the doors.
He did do this has been my dream. Arsenal had been my dream.
Did he really?
He did. But it had a little bit of the Robbie Keane about it, because I think he said that about Dortmund and Man United as well.
Yeah. I honestly think Mkhitaryan's going to do really well at Arsenal, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I think this deal's pretty good. I think you've got a player who was unhappy at Arsenal, goes to a team where he's happy. You've got a player who's unhappy at Man United, goes to a team where he's going to be happier. I think this is one of those things that it will all work out.
I also think, I tweeted today from my personal account that I think there's a decent chance. I think my specific prediction was that Mkhitaryan will win Arsenal Player of the Month before this season is over.
That's a good prediction.
I think he just fits into their system. He plays a little bit more like they want to play. The Mourinho thing, I don't think really suited him at all, and it kind of stifled him. I imagine with a bit more freedom, and I was watching Arsenal today. They beat Chelsea, but it was not a comprehensive victory by any stretch of the imagination. No, he did not, that I saw at least. And I just have to believe he comes into that team, lights things up. We see a little bit more of that old Arsenal one touch combo that leads to a goal. Suddenly things are clicking.
I saw Ted Knutson, the stats guy, analyst guy, tweeting out one of Mkhitaryan's radars. Those radars he does where it represents the various actions from when he was with Klopp at Dortmund. And I kind of understand those radars, but basically the closer the things go to the edge, the better it is. A lot of things went to the edge on the radar.
There we go.
A lot of radar coverage. So get excited, Arsenal fans.
Indeed. But can he do it on a not cold, not particularly windy night against Denmark? That's my question. See what I did there?
So plenty to talk about on today's show. We're going to talk UEFA Nations League. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about that. No one has the same question as Matthew Pike. We'll be answering that question on today's show. We're going to talk about the Olympics. We're going to talk about the definition of form. And we're going to talk about some changes to rec soccer. How about that for a teaser? But first, US Women's National Team beat Denmark 5-1 just a few days ago. We didn't have a chance to talk about it because we were so focused on the presidential election. I watched this game and I really wanted to sort of kick off our show by having a quick chat about the women's national team because this is sort of to me, this is the check-in as we start the march towards the 2019 Women's World Cup.
Agreed. I'm happy to be discussing it. I'm going to add, though, I have not told you this wrinkle. Okay. I am planning to discuss it by briefly inserting parts of Juan Carlos Salas' scouting report because he scouts Mallory Pugh. He sent us a very good one.
Good day
so
for her.
I'm going to start with Mallory Pugh began 2018 by ripping apart the Danish defense as she helped the U.S. Women's National Team defeat Denmark 5-1 in San Diego, so definitely not cold or windy.
She didn't so much rip it apart as they sort of they ripped it for her and presented openings.
She forced them to, I think. It's like, rip that wrapping paper out. Yeah. She got an assist and her first career brace. Pugh started the evening notching her 12th career assist in the 17th minute after picking the ball up. We can talk more about that later on. But I want to talk just to set the stage. They won. She played well. She
certainly did, right. 2 goals, 1 assist. The interesting thing is that Denmark, they're a decent team. I believe they were Euro finalists. I may have that wrong. They went 1-0 up. Nadia Nadim put them 1-0 up. US Women's National Team it was suddenly like, oh no, is this all going to go wrong? And then 2 goals in just a few minutes, they were back in front.
But first, we have to talk about the Denmark goal. How closely did you watch that?
I watched it twice, but not with the sort of detail that you're looking at me.
It blew my mind. It's Nadia Nadim. She drops back. She's like standing inside the 6-yard box. She comes outside the 6-yard box to win the ball to put it in the back of the net. But I genuinely thought for a moment that Denmark were defending that because at one point, there were 5 Danish players inside the 6-yard box, not one American goal side. Right before the corner came in, Mallory Pugh sprinted back to cover the near post. But it was insane that the U.S. women were so dedicated to playing a zone that they left 5 players open in the box. And then I think kind of were aware of them, but nobody attacked the ball. So it was
they
like we're
tried.
playing a zone.
I think Ertz and Dahlkamper both jumped.
They both jumped vertically. Yeah. They did not attack, and that's why.
That's the problem.
And that's why Nadim was able to drop in between them and kind of put Ertz a little bit off. I think she maybe gave her a little bit of a nudge. Nothing illegal, no complaints there. But it was just a very strange approach, and it leads me to believe that Denmark watched some tape of the U.S. women defending corners and thought that's an opportunity.
But it wasn't enough to stem the oncoming tide that was the US Women's National Team. Because here's how I saw the rest of the game. This is my very quick breakdown of it. Is Denmark tried to play out of the back, essentially looked like a very early draft of a Pep Guardiola team.
Yes.
And the US just kept pressing and kept picking off passes. There were a lot of sort of goalkeeper to fullback passes that Mallory Pugh was like, nope, mine, I'm taking that. I mean, that's kind of, I think that's pretty much how one of the, maybe the equalising goal came about, right? She just drives to the end line, cuts it back across, and Alex Morgan has that very nice sort of, like instep, weird angle of the foot to make the equaliser.
Yes, and I think your point about like an early Man City iteration is accurate because they did
like a Google translated Pep plan that someone sort of got wrong.
Agreed. Because they did still manage to play out of that pressure at times, but it was always still that element of like, I'm not the one who lost the ball this time. Like it was always kind of like pinging the ball at each other and then being like, whew, it wasn't me. Because they definitely turned the ball over far more often than they needed to or should have, and that's definitely down to U.S. pressure.
And they definitely look like a team, Denmark were a team that were just going to, kind of like early Pep, in a way that was sort of, we're going to stick to this until we get it right, but they just kept getting it wrong. The US were sort of too aggressive and too good at closing down space. And I do want to sort of pinpoint Julie Ertz. So Julie Johnson, some people will know her as. In the new formation that the US have gone with after all the experimentation in 2017, they've essentially gone with a 4-3-3 with Julie Ertz as the anchor, the number 6. And she was absolutely magnificent, in my opinion, in that role. She kind of did everything right, closed down space, was aggressive. She even had those sort of slide tackles that we remember from the 2015 World Cup. But in midfield, she scored the second goal, right, with a really nice, like curved, almost it reminded me of like a Chicharito strikery type run that she made to get around the back.
Get a foot to it, put it in the net, that's all that matters.
The other part, the thing I'm excited about for the new tactics under Jill Ellis is that sometimes Ertz from that defensive midfield role would drop back between the defenders, be like the middle of a back three, and then the fullbacks will be able to push on. So you've got a US team that's like 4-3-3, but can change shape, and all because of Julie Ertz in the centre.
And so I think when you're conceding a set-piece goal, that's never ideal, but it's more ideal.
Woke everybody up there. It was like a big cup of coffee for every US Women's National Team player.
True, number one. Number two, I would say, is that also it is better, I would say, to concede a set-piece goal in a meaningless friendly or a relatively meaningless friendly than it is to concede a goal from open play.
Yes.
Because open play means something broke down, somebody's not as comfortable. But I never saw Denmark really have that many solid opportunities, and I think a big part of that was because that 4-3-3 was so well drilled, and everybody seemed to know what was expected, so you did have people holding the midfield, those three midfielders, but you would also have Mallory Pugh coming back to help, but then you have the fullbacks pushing forward. And I think
sometimes Smith, the right back, would overlap Mallory Pugh. So you had like a 4-3-3, but then an overlapping right back because it looked really well drilled,
It did indeed.
And so the problem for me with the US Women's National Team, there's always been too many good players, and we could never quite figure out what the best lineup was. Do you remember at the Olympics there was a thing of Mallory Pugh and Crystal Dunn both wanted to play on the right, but one of them would always end up on the left, and that player would have a worse game than the player on the right. And it seems to me that Gilles has kind of solved that, at least with this starting 11, by saying, all right, the front three, Alex Morgan's the target forward. Not perfect, right? Like, she's not Abby Wambach in terms of the flicking on headers and all that, but better than expected. And I know she talked about something she wanted to work on. Mallory Pugh on the right, where she wants to be, devastating, absolutely devastating. Denmark did not have an answer for her pace or her pressing or her crossing or her shooting. And then on the left, you've got a very different player in Megan Rapinoe.
Correct.
Who is not fast. She's kind of got no acceleration, but she doesn't need it because she's the smartest player out there. She has the best sort of eye for a pass. She has the best ability to deliver a cross. So you've got two different sides doing two very different things, and I thought it really, really worked.
And I thought it stood out, especially when the substitutions started to happen.
Yes.
And you did see like balls being delivered that would have connected with U.S. players instead being cut out and turned out for corners or being intercepted and played the other way. And you could just see that little talent disparity increase once Megan Rapinoe wasn't involved.
Can I raise the one thing that was a concern? I think I texted you about this earlier. The second Mallory Pugh goal, where I believe she picks off a pass again from Denmark coming out.
That time she does,
And she drives at the defenders.
I think, both times she did. You're right.
She drives at the defenders, and Megan Rapinoe is open on the left side, her arms in the air. It's the obvious pass because the other two defenders have been drawn towards Pugh, right? And towards Alex Morgan, who's also there. The square ball.
That's what I would.
The square ball to Rapinoe was 100% on and should have been played. Instead, Pugh kind of like drifts one way, spots a little gap inside the near post, and fires it in low. And nobody looks very happy with Mallory Pugh, especially not Megan Rapinoe.
I think you are being a little too harsh on Mallory
You think
Pugh
so?
here. I do. And I think that because I'm going to continue Juan Carlos's report.
Okay.
So going back to the Mallory Pugh's first goal, 2 minutes into the second half.
Not the goal we just talked about then.
No. 2 minutes into the second half, Pugh intercepted Denmark's Sophia Pettersson's backwards pass, took on Yanni Arndt one-on-one. Not that Arndt gave her much of a challenge, key point there, and fired a shot to the top corner.
Yes.
In the 65th. Pugh again capitalized on another Danish defensive mistake, this time by goalkeeper Stina Petersen. And here's the key part for me, is that she picks her head up and she recognizes that it's Arndt in front of her again. Arndt backpedaling and, as you said, sort of checking on Alex Morgan too. And I think Pugh in that moment sees, I beat you once doing this, you're backpedaling, I can do it again, and literally does the same move. Feigns inside, cuts outside, has the shot, scores the goal.
Okay.
So I think you're right that, again, it's one of those...
Rapinoe's body language was not impressed.
No, and I think you're right that, like, it's a difficult thing where that probably should have been the pass, but it ends in a goal. Now,
it's hard to argue with, right?
Does it always end in a goal against better opposition? No. Does Megan Rapinoe probably get a better opportunity against better opposition? I'd say yes. It's just still, though, like with a young American attacker, it's always exciting to see a player put her head down, go at somebody, take them on, and get that goal.
It did feel like Mallory Pugh brought a level of, in a good way, selfishness.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to show you the world what I can do. And I really think, because her Olympics were disappointing, right? She had this big reputation and didn't really deliver. Maybe because of that right wing left thing we talked about. She's primed to be the absolute star of the 2019 Women's World Cup.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say this, though. I think part of it, though, I might be more inclined to agree with you, except that you texted me, like, when you watch the highlights, look at Megan Rapinoe's face.
Yes, which was the wrong phrase because you actually don't get a closer view.
You don't, but that's what I was looking for.
I should have said look at her arms.
And so, but I think because of that, it's probably one of those situations in which, because you sent that text, I was ready for like, oh boy, like she's going to come into frame and start like berating Mallory Pugh or something like that. And so when she just kind of...
She doesn't come and hug her.
I mean, she definitely... But neither does Alex Morgan Pugh herself doesn't really celebrate. She high-fives Alex Morgan as they like kind of calmly walk back. And so I think if I hadn't gotten that text from you, I probably would have been like, ooh, Megan Rapinoe was mad. But instead, I just saw it as like, oh, she's just like, oh, she scored. We walk back.
Fair
so
enough.
it's a difference of perception.
Yeah.
Who's to say for sure?
I also want to highlight, before we move on from this, I think this might be in the scouting reports afterwards. I haven't read all the way through them. Centre-back Davidson. I'm not sure if this was her debut or it's one of her early caps. Was absolutely brilliant. She looks so smooth on the ball. She weirdly reminded me of maybe like Rio Ferdinand or someone like that, who was like super comfortable bringing the ball out of the back. So she's going to be someone I'm really excited. It also means that when you think of Julia Ertz in defensive midfield, you think, oh, we've lost a really good centre-back. I'm much more okay with it now.
They're still pretty well connected, though, because it was Davidson who, off of the U.S.'s short corner, headed it into the path of Julia Ertz for the goal.
That's got to be in the scouting report,
Davidson gets the assist. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think we have one today. We might have one tomorrow.
We'll find out when we get there.
Which is to say that I have not compiled all of the many, many reports. We have many, many to get to today.
One final thing to look forward with the women's team. There's the She Believes Cup coming in March. There's World Cup qualifying in October.
Sunil Gulati guaranteed victory.
When we... Thank you, George Qureshi. When we get down to those important games, I'll be interested to see if the more senior players, like, say, Carly Lloyd, who started on the bench in this game, and I think, weirdly, the US was better off without her on the field in this 4-3-3 formation. Be interested to see if she still can command a starting spot, or if she'll be happy to be sort of coming off the bench and contributing that way.
I doubt she'll be happy.
We shall see.
Yeah.
In other women's soccer news,
yes.
We got a tweet from Whitney DeWall. Thank you, Whitney, for pointing this out. The Boston Breakers might be in trouble.
I think are in trouble.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So I guess the background of this is the ownership group, it seems like maybe could not sustain the club. There was a new ownership group expected to come in for 2019, but there was a little bit of a question mark as to what would happen this season, if the league would have to maybe help until they could get to the point where that new ownership group took charge. Now it seems like the new group has pulled out, and there's no real signs that anything is going to change in the near future. And this is especially distressing because, as far as I know, no one really knows what's happening, including the players.
Yep.
So these players who were drafted last week, 4 players, now kind of don't know what their future holds.
The season starts in 59 days, I think, is what I read on Twitter.
Yes.
I saw Stephanie Yang, who we messaged back and forth because she's one of our go-to sources, said that she's not really getting any answers. They just keep saying, we're working on it. I saw Jeff Kassouf, who's also a really good source for women's soccer, of 442, I believe he's still there, saying that there will be an announcement tomorrow. We just don't know what that announcement will be.
Yep. I did want to add, though, as is the state of U.S. soccer, Stephanie Yang, not intentionally, but definitely made me even more annoyed with U.S. soccer because last year Boston had the number 1 pick, drafted Rose Lavelle. She missed a huge chunk of the season. And I'm going to read you what Steph wrote about that. Rose Lavelle is a singular talent who can make or break a midfield, and she was really a really exciting number 1 pick in 2017. It's not anyone's fault that she picked up a bad non-contact hamstring injury that took her out of competition early in the season. However, it most certainly is someone's fault that she seemed to re-injure that hamstring by being played too early and for too long in a subsequent US Women's National Team friendly. So, just like US soccer... do something right. Come on, guys.
Take better care of the women's players.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Okay, so any ideas for Boston Breakers?
I think we've stumbled upon what I think is a very smart solution. I don't know if Boston fans will agree, but I think the solution is the best PR approach I could see would be for the Crafts to buy the Boston Breakers and announce we're going to build them a soccer-specific stadium with the New England Revolution.
Yep.
They can split that one. Now we've got soccer-specific stadiums. There we go.
Yeah, it would be
a singular soccer-specific stadium, rather.
I think this is obviously very, very, very optimistic, given how the Crafts have treated New England. But if they were sort of ready to be like, okay, we haven't done this right, we're going to sort of, we're going to reinvest and refocus on soccer. I think buying the Boston Breakers and not necessarily pairing the organizations. They'd still be 2 separate teams, obviously. But you could then build one soccer-specific stadium that'd be a great home for both of the teams. Yeah,
because, right now with the Revolution, you've got Lee Wynn not showing up for preseason.
That's a weird story happening.
He wants to move, and it just seems like now would be the time for them to try to engender a little bit of goodwill. And maybe you do that by saying, look, we're going to keep this team here. They're one of the original franchises. We're going to keep them around. We're going to build a stadium that they can use, that the Revolution can use. Things are going to be good instead of playing in a giant NFL stadium.
One thing Boston Breakers fans could do to help the team, we noticed, if you go to their Wikipedia page, the link on the Wikipedia page that goes to the Boston Breakers website is broken. Not because it makes it look like bostonbreakers.com is broken. It's just that it goes to an old page that is no longer in use. Yes. If you're a Boston Breakers fan, please go to Wikipedia, edit that link. It's in the top right corner of the page to, improve the perception. There might be a potential owner who's like clicking that link and is like, no, I'm not going to invest all my millions, right? Fix that, please.
I'm sure that's what's holding it up. Fix that, please, and we will, in the meantime, do our best to keep you all updated with developments as they come.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we've got listener questions.
We certainly do. We have 4 listener questions. First one is all about the UEFA Nations League. The group stage was announced today. The draw for the groups happened today. We have a question from Matthew Pike. Are you ready, Taylor?
I am ready to read it because I feel like you have an impassioned feeling about this one.
Yeah, I'm not the UEFA Nations League #1 fan, right?
I think you
I'm
might be.
I'm going to buy a T-shirt.
I think you genuinely might be. Will the UEFA Nations League, specifically the increased competitiveness of and importance of the international fixtures to smaller nations in leagues B, C, and D, Darryl, you're going to explain that one,
yes,
have an effect on the decisions of European dual nationals to choose a European side over the United States? For example, would Kenny Saif have chosen to help Israel try and get promoted from League C to League B rather than play for the United States?
Quick answer is no, I don't think so. Longer answer is maybe to explain what all these things mean.
I think that's probably a very good idea.
Here's what the UEFA Nations League, now that there's been the draw, you can go to, I'm going to recommend the Wikipedia page. It has the best visual representation of how all this works, right? So all 55 UEFA national teams have been drawn into 4 tiers. Tier A, B, C, D. Best in A, worst in D. Think of them like grades, right? Within each tier, there have been 4 groups have been drawn. So Tier A, for example, are in groups of 3. England have been drawn with Spain and Croatia. What happens is, if you finish bottom of your group, any of the 4 groups across your tier, you get relegated to the tier below. So England could go from A to B. Whereas Israel, they're in tier C. They could go from B, they could go up to B, they could go down to D. So there is basically promotion and relegation in European national team soccer right now.
I'm now fascinated by what happens to the bottom place team in the classification D.
They get sent to CONCACAF.
They'd have to wear like shame jerseys or something.
So now that we've briefly laid that out, I'm sure there'll be more questions.
Wait, I just heard your burn. That's not nice.
What's that?
Don't be dissing CONCACAF.
Now that we've...
It's fair.
It's going to be the only other place with the Nations League, probably. We think it's coming to CONCACAF in September, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
We think?
We think. It's been rumoured.
That pause was genuine, because whoever knows with CONCACAF. So, to Matthew's question, with the UEFA Nations League, does it make it more likely that dual nationals, like say Kenny Saif, would instead of going to the US, would they be more likely to stay with their European team because they would see like, oh, right now we're in Tier C, I want to help my team get to Tier B? Yeah.
My answer was no.
My answer is no as well. And I think that's...
Why so?
Because I think if your head can be turned, your head can be turned. And I think if you're a person who wants to stay and fight and help your team make that commitment and play those games to get to the next level and maybe the next level and then maybe the next level, then you probably would have stayed there anyway. But if you're a guy who's like, I could just go play here and maybe play in the World Cup, that's really what I want.
I think you said the 2 magic words, right? The World Cup is still the biggest and best thing. If Kenny Saif if it really was between Israel and the US and he has a chance to go to a World Cup with the US, which is kind of what he did in the summer, right? That overweighs any action that you get in the UEFA Nations League, at least for now. So this gets to a thing of, I believe the UEFA Nations League and this whole system really might be the future of international soccer. I think this thing's going to grow. I think it's going to be really successful. I think it's going to be really popular because it is essentially filling out the schedule. So there's almost no room for friendlies anymore. I think it's a really big upgrade. But I have seen all the reports about this today after the draw. People essentially laughing at it, saying it's silly, saying it's too complicated, all that kind of stuff. And I really want to stand up for it and say, I think this is a great idea.
Why do you think it's a great idea?
Because friendlies really were meaningless, a lot of people would say, right? I would watch them for England. I'd be interested to see what was happening, but there was nothing on the line, no points on the line. I like a system where teams are playing for points, playing for relegation, playing for some promotion, all that kind of stuff. I just think it's going to make the whole thing a lot more intriguing.
By creating an artificial tournament?
Yeah, I mean, you could say the World Cup's an artificial tournament, right? You know what I mean? Everything's artificial until it's established and has a tradition, right? Just because it's the first iteration of something, you've got to give it a chance to see how it feels.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I still think I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not as excited as you are. I'm not down on it because it's too confusing or seems silly.
But a lot of people are. They're very confused by. I think they're confused by the fact that there are tiers and then there are groups within. It's like rows and columns. You know what I mean? People are slightly confused about that. Doesn't help that the branding UEFA have gone with is diamonds. So when they did the group draw, they did a diamond version of the flag, and I was like, which one is England? I couldn't even tell which flag was which. It sort of added to the confusion.
That's weird.
Yeah.
For me, it's still a little bit like you're absolutely right. I take your point that it is the first iteration. You've got to give it time to develop, and I will. I'm not saying we should get rid of it right now, but it still feels a little bit like a tournament that is here and it exists now, and we'll see how it goes. Which I don't think is kind of what you want for this major. Change to the way international qualifying and friendlies are going to work. And I say that because I'm not even sure qualifying will change all that much, but it's just more so right now. It feels a little bit like when we were talking about this off air, you were like, "What if England get relegated?"
I think arguing is what we're doing.
Yeah, that's probably true. When you were like, "What if England get relegated?" I'm like, then they'll play in like some kind of semi-friendlies against other teams who aren't Spain or Croatia.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like that big of a deal.
So to me, I would take that as sort of my team was in the A tier. Like England is always clinging to the top tier in some way, right? Hoping to be in the conversation for favourites, but clinging to the top tier. If they got down and were a B tier team, they would literally be a B tier team. There'd be evidence that England were not as good as we want them to be. And then the next time this comes around, we'll be fighting to get back and prove we belong in the top tier. So it really, I feel that. Other people might not feel that, but I think the acid test, is that the right phrase, will be how the players and the sort of the federations feel about it. If you see an England team that if they lose to, I don't know who they play in the final game, but say it's Croatia on the final day, if they lose to Croatia, they get relegated to Tier B. If you see the players really hyped up for it and it starts with like a gigantic aggressive slide tackle from someone like, we are in this game, then you'll know that it means something. But if they sort of treat it like a friendly, then you'll know that it doesn't mean anything. And I predict it'll be the former, not the latter, but I'm not playing in it, so I guess we won't know until it happens.
We won't know until it happens. I'm inclined to believe it will be the latter. I know, but I also think that I think part of my, not dislike, but my sort of meh feelings about this are that I guess I had this idea, maybe I misunderstood the format coming in, but I had this idea it would be this like top tier, this very elite tier, and if you're able to hang on, that really does mean something. But when you're always sending one team down from a group of three and you're always bringing one up, you're always going to have a lot of teams go down. So there's a decent chance that you could see a bunch of those top-tier teams. I mean, isn't there a group with like Germany, France, and the Netherlands?
That is, yeah.
So one of those
teams didn't make the World Cup.
But that doesn't make you a second-tier team.
I mean, it would literally.
It does. I know, but the thing is, like, if they go down and who's like Slovakia are in the B group, if Slovakia go up, no one is going to be like, well, Slovakia are better than Spain now because they're in Group A and Spain are in Group B. It's just sort of like it still doesn't have that level of permanence that it will 10 or 15 years down the road.
But right now you could say Iceland are better than the Netherlands because one of them made the World Cup and one didn't, right? I'm essentially saying it's like a chicken and egg thing, right? Once the competition means something, then your placement within the competition will mean something, and we don't know which way it's going to be.
I see, and I think what we landed on off air, which I think is worth bringing up here,
was an arm wrestle.
Well, I think I'd lose that. I suck at arm wrestling, but I think it goes back to the fact that you're European and I'm not, and so I think it matters more to you where England stand in terms of the tiers of competition.
Yeah, my whole life that's mattered to me.
This is very true.
It's been a very disappointing life so far.
But for me, and this goes to a question we're going to answer later, like the Netherlands aren't going to go to the World Cup. That is factually true. Italy are not as well. Iceland are. I don't think Iceland are better than Italy. I think they may have been in this one run, in this moment of form. Get to that later. And so it just still sort of like, even if Iceland are in the top tier and Netherlands are in the second tier, it's going to take a long time before I'm like, yep, Iceland are in that top tier. It's just that way of thinking, I think.
Well, here's but I also, to my point of like how much teams will care about it, I do think that UEFA have done a very good job of incentivizing performance in this sort of initial UEFA Nations League.
Yes. Because
what they've done is, and at one end, you've got, aside of the promotion relegation, if you finish top of one of the groups in the top tier, the A tier, those four teams go to a playoff next summer called the Final Four. Recognize that branding?
I do.
For a trophy, right? Which
we'll see you in court.
We'll see how much that means, yeah. But also, everybody who wins their group, not just their tier, but their group, is entered into a playoff for Euro 2020 qualification.
Yes.
And if you then qualify through the actual qualifying tournament, you're not worried about that. But all the teams that didn't qualify through Euro 2020 qualifying get a second chance at it. Yep. That incentivizes winning your group.
Yes. And I think for me, that's the big selling point. That's what kind of brought me back into like, all right, I'm more pro than against, is that you will have that moment where you've got those, 12 teams, is it? 16 teams that are going to qualify from winning their groups. And then as some teams qualify and others don't, you'll have some of those lines, like names crossed off. And eventually you're going to be like, these 6 teams are not going to the Euros. But one of them might if they win this tournament.
Go Macedonia.
Or one of them will if they win that
tournament.
tournament.
Imagine if Scotland qualified for a tournament through this for the first time in a long time.
I mean, there's lots of teams that could, certainly. And it does definitely open it up to, like, I can't think of a Euros where there was a major team not in there. So that doesn't seem like it's going to be as big a deal.
Remember 2008?
No. Who was not there?
England didn't make it.
I know, that was a joke because they're not a major team.
We're an A-tier team for now.
So they would be in that playoff. But what I mean is that, yes, to your point, you're probably going to see Scotland and Northern Ireland and countries like along that line that probably wouldn't make it unless they had a really good run of games. Yeah. It is a second chance where you just got to win a few in an elimination competition.
All right, final note on this before we move on, just in case you're wondering. This is going to run September to November 2018. That's going to be the entirety of the UEFA Nations League, apart from that Final Four playoff. Okay, just so you know, that's when this happens.
Okay.
Get behind it. Make it happen.
Sure.
Before we...
Is that what it takes to make it happen?
Yeah.
Is for people to be behind it?
Yeah, people show up, cheer.
They're Tinkerbell? You have to believe in it for it to be real?
England's opening game is England v Spain at Wembley in September. I want Wembley full. I want people roaring it on. I want it to have a sense of occasion. We're going.
You didn't deny that it's Tinkerbell, so I'm a little worried about you.
Before we move on, Taylor Rockwell, today's show is sponsored by Health IQ.
I've heard of them.
An insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, vegetarians get lower rates on their life insurance. If you go to healthiq.com/TSS, you'll support the show and you'll be seeing if you qualify. Why do you look confused over there, sir?
Do you ever lift weights?
Actually, I do.
Do you qualify for all of those things?
Yes.
You do.
How about that?
You're all of those things.
I have to admit, my weightlifting is not the impressive type.
You're rocking them 5s?
It's a 10. I have one 10 at my house, and I'll just basically go through a cycle of like lift and drop and lift and drop. Yeah, and I'm not trying to get big. I'm just trying to
isometric. Is that what that is?
I don't know.
All right.
I'm just trying to sort of, I guess, tone is the word, or achieve some level of tone. Right now, I'm like I'm like Petke's printer.
So maybe neither one of us crosses off the weightlifter category.
I mean, I have lifted a weight. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm way too scared in the gym with the big dudes with the giant things. I'm not getting near that.
So if you say aren't a weightlifter, are there things you can do to improve your likelihood of qualifying?
Yeah, well, aside from obviously the running and all that kind of stuff, when you create a Health IQ profile, you can go to the Health IQ website, healthiq.com/TSS. That's the only URL you can visit. You can take healthy quizzes to prove that you live a healthy lifestyle. They have a time limit, so you can't cheat, which means you can't cheat, Taylor.
Right.
I'm about to give you the Health IQ quiz of the day. I don't know what it could be. It could be about weightlifting, in which case we're both in big trouble. It could be about food. It could be about running.
All right.
Okay, ready? I'm going to click Start Quiz of the Day. I got some bad news for you.
Is weightlifting?
Well, it's got a picture of a guy. He doesn't have any weights, but it says fitness, balancing, mobility, and stability training.
Oh, that's what I'm all about.
I think that's like a core workout type thing.
Sure.
Okay, you ready for it? Mm-hmm. Start quiz.
Is it sit at a table? Because if so,
you're doing
good
it right
to
now.
Go.
Here's 3 questions. Mm-hmm. If a joint does not have adequate mobility, the body will compensate by finding mobility elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Stiff hips often lead to what? Headaches, lower back pain, shoulder impingement, carpal tunnel.
I'm going to say lower back pain.
Correct. You are correct. So this is your general health knowledge helping you out here. Okay, next one.
Or am I just family history of bad hips?
Is that a real thing?
No.
We have some big words here. The shoulder joint, scapulothoracic, it's
connected to my wristwatch,
is a very shallow, hey Dr. Nick, is a very shallow ball and socket joint prone to instability and injuries such as what?
Dislocation.
Deltoid hypertrophy, lower back instability, rotator cuff tears, or rhomboid strains.
Rotator cuff tears.
Rotator cuff tears?
It's harder to say than I thought it would be.
Correct. You're acing this. I'm genuinely impressed. I mean this. I'm genuinely impressed. Okay, final one for 3 out of 3. Targeted moves can improve mobility and stability. Performing various exercises while balancing on one leg can improve blank.
Field sobriety tests.
Foot/knee mobility, which is kind of what that is, right? Shoulder mobility, shoulder stability, foot/knee stability.
What was the first one? Foot slash knee?
So foot slash knee mobility, shoulder mobility.
Foot slash knee stability. D.
Foot slash knee stability.
Final
Ready?
answer.
Correct.
There we go. I went 3 for 3 this time. I never go 3 for 3.
3 for 3. Maybe you should apply for lower rates on your life insurance.
I may well now.
To see if you qualify, listeners, go to healthiq.com/TSS to get your free quote, or mention the promo code TSS when you talk to a Health IQ agent. The link, healthiq.com/TSS, will be in the show notes. See if you can do as well as Taylor did on the quiz of the day.
I believe in our listeners.
I don't believe I would have done as well.
You got to watch more baseball, then I think you know more about rotating cuffs.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I refuse. Cricket only.
But instead, let's get back to some questions, shall we?
Okay.
I'm not even going to acknowledge that statement. Yes.
Next question is from Phil Doucette. Phil says, I enjoyed your show about projecting the Olympic 11. I didn't mean to include the compliment. I forgot to cut it out, but we're keeping it now.
That's fine.
Phil's question is, in terms of building interest in US soccer, creating a narrative about the program rising from the ashes, giving our rising young stars the greatest success possible, etc., would throwing our weight and talent behind prioritizing the Olympic side over a Copa America Centenario side make the most sense? So Phil's referring to the idea that Olympic 2020 in Tokyo would theoretically be the same as the Copa America 2020 that Sunil Gulati told me to my face, we are kind of working on it, but I can't guarantee it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I think I would say theoretically on paper, yes, it makes sense to prioritize the Olympics, but no, it does not make sense to prioritize the Olympics is my answer.
Why?
Because I think if you're a listener to this show, you understand the kind of bad history we have when it comes to qualifying for the Olympics.
As in not doing
Olympics. Yeah, and even when we do, we don't do particularly well. So I think looking at it as like, oh, this is an opportunity to get a bunch of youngsters minutes and these exciting names who we've heard a little bit about. Suddenly maybe they get more involved in a sustained qualifying campaign. I get why that would be exciting. But number one, I don't think that's going to be exciting to the masses, to the people who don't listen to a soccer podcast 5 times a week. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that, like, my dad, for example, isn't going to be like, oh, do we think we're going to qualify for the Olympics? Like, what
it's not on his radar, right?
Wait, we're playing like Brazil? I want to watch that game.
Yeah.
That's what's going to matter more. And the other element, which I think is more important than anything, is that a lot of the guys who, if we had qualified for the World Cup, might be fighting for places on that Olympic team, I think are going to be either secure in their places on the senior team or fighting for places on the senior team. And I'd rather see them there than playing with an Olympic team.
Well, I think that's part of Phil's point, right? Is like, should we redirect Pulisic, McKennie, etc., to the Olympic team to give it a full force good effort? The problem is, you can't, right? Because it's the Olympics and not a proper FIFA event. Some of these guys you can't even get released from their clubs, right? There'd be trouble. So you may not even be able to field the full team. The other argument for prioritizing a Copa America is that my understanding is that we would be hosting that Copa America.
Almost
right.
Certainly,
I'm going to call it a Centenario, even though I know it would be 104 years. But the same sort of Centenario event that we had in 2016, it was possible because the US has the infrastructure and the willingness to host that tournament, right? So my understanding is if it happens again, which would be good for the coffers
and
of
the
US
earning
soccer,
power,
by the way, we'd be the host nation. So if we'd sent all our best players to the Olympics, that'd be what Brazil did, right? When they didn't send Neymar to Copa America, they got smashed. They had a really embarrassing Copa America Centenario. If we're hosting a tournament, we damn well better put our best team on the field.
Yeah.
And they would get released is the other thing.
But I do think the United States is strangely, I can't believe I'm about to say this, in a position where there is still a decent amount of depth in that team. That it's not these guys are all terrible. You're going to see some of the guys, maybe not as many guys from the Trinidad game, but from that World Cup qualifying campaign, they're going to be back. But you've got a lot of youngsters who probably would have been challenging for minutes if the U.S. had qualified for the World Cup. You've got a lot of other youngsters who maybe aren't as on the radar yet. I did enjoy when Bob Bradley was being interviewed by Max and Herc. There was a conversation about Matt Olasunde, and we were like, I know who he is.
Didn't Bob Bradley quizzed Max and Herc? Do you guys know who Matt Olasunde is? And they're like, no, sorry, never heard of him. And I was like, I know who he is. TSS listeners will know who he is. Man United right back, American from Trenton, New Jersey.
But is young enough to qualify for that Olympic team. And so there are those names coming through. And so there is a strange amount of depth to the U.S. that could see them really focus on both competitions.
I'm actually excited about Olympic qualification prospects because it will essentially be the 2019 World Cup team, which is a lot of the 2017 U17 team, right? It could be Josh Sargent, Chris Durkin, Andrew Carlton. It could be all those guys. They'd still be a little young, but they could be the backbone of an Olympic team, but not quite old enough to play for the senior team. It could be thrilling even with a non-first choice team.
So both.
So we can have an exciting Olympics and the full force team.
Yep.
Keep calling it the full force team like it's some some superhero outfit.
It was an 80s action show.
For the Copa America Centenario. Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from RJ Wilson, and I have to say, I love this question.
I'm sort of terrified of it, but I love it.
What is form?
Yes.
That's
Great question.
Now I'll read the whole thing. What is form? Specifically, when does a really good player in a really good team, or in really good form, excuse me, like Mohamed Salah, become a world-class player? Conversely, when does a world-class player in not as good a form, like Cristiano Ronaldo, become just a really good player?
January 7th. I was picking a hilariously specific date because the point is you can't choose a specific point when it happens. I don't believe.
Okay.
I also kind of believe that form and world class are made up concepts that are super hard to define. So I guess all we can do is maybe assume that RJ is asking, like, he's not asking what's the definitive answer. He's asking what's Daryl's answer and what's Taylor's answer.
And my answer, to answer with a cliche...
See, I turned it around to make
That's
you
fine.
answer. Yeah.
My answer is to answer with a cliche, which is genuinely that form is temporary and class is permanent. I think that is a big part of it.
That's Analyticism, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a...
Form is fallacy, he says.
I think form is temporary, class is permanent. Is, I think, a long-standing saying.
Okay.
But... what if I were gonna, and with that in mind, if I were going to answer his question, if he like really pressed me and said, but give me like some dates, I would say form is over a month or so, that you can be in an amazing run of form, that like say you play 6 games, you score in 4 of them, you get an assist in 1 of them, like that's a good run of form, even if you have a couple bad games in there, versus...
okay, so you're taking like a longer view to form that it can include some bad games as long as you have a general record of doing well.
Yeah,
okay.
As long as it's not like a downturn where suddenly you fail to score and you're struggling and your first touch goes out of bounds.
Well, okay, just to quiz you on this a little bit.
Wait, hold on, let me finish, because I was going to say, and then class, I would say, like in terms of like leveling up or down, is over a much longer period of time, at least 6 months, maybe 12 months in my mind, is sort of when you go from, and maybe even more than that, because like Riyad Mahrez for a brief period of time was in an amazing run of form, but I would say...
people might have called him world-class during that
period.
But
I think that would have been incorrect. I think it takes longer than that to suddenly be a world-class player. That said, my final point on this is that I hate the term world-class.
Me too. I don't think it means anything.
I don't think it does
means
either.
Something different to each individual person. Therefore, it doesn't really mean anything because you can't easily define someone in a way that we all agree.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think that there are people
we can all agree Leo Messi is world-class, but we're kind of struggling after that.
Well, that's the thing, is I think there are people out there who have this hard and fast concept that world-class means if some alien planet came here and in a Space Jam type situation challenged our 11 best players, who would they be? Who are those world 11?
Yeah.
And first of all, I still think that would be an impossible task because, like, I don't know, is Dani Alves still one of the best fullbacks in the world because he bombs forward but he doesn't really defend? I don't know. Like, it's always that sort of difficult level to really figure out. And so that's where I kind of stay away from that type of thinking.
Is something at stake in this game?
I believe...
Is it like we own your planet, or we're going to demolish your planet hitchhiker style unless you win this game?
Well, that's because the blueprints were on file for years. No, this is that I believe the Looney Tunes once again have to go back to the alien planet. We would lose the Looney Tunes. It'd be sad.
I'd be okay with that.
Oh, harsh words. Daryl Grove, anti-Bugs Bunny.
So in terms of form, I really find this hard to define. I don't take such a long view as you because I think that like if you score 2 goals in a game, next weekend you score 2 goals in a game, I think by the 3rd game, someone will be saying Lukaku is in good form.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it is maybe more short-term than that. But that's why I also think it can be kind of misleading because then he could have a stinker in the 3rd game and it's almost like him being in good form was actually just he had 2 good games in a row.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. So maybe I'm agreeing with your definition, but I'm saying that maybe the media tend to go with a more short-term definition.
That is the point that I would say, is that I think a lot of it is media-driven because what it really comes down to is does the player think that he or she is in good form? And I really do think that that is a factor, that if you are really backing yourself, you're going to try stuff you wouldn't otherwise try. If you think... I can do this. I can rainbow over somebody.
So now we're talking about confidence now.
Yeah, a little bit. I think confidence and form aren't that far apart. That like if you have the confidence if you've been executing this move over and over and over again, you have the confidence to believe that in a moment of high pressure, I can execute that move again. If I've been hitting every single shot on frame, you have that confidence to believe, even if I'm shooting from an unlikely angle, I'm going to put this one on frame.
Man, this conversation is either really smart or really dumb. I'm not sure which one.
Things can be 2 things.
It's kind of the concept of our show, right?
Yeah.
I would say a good example to think about in this, for me, is Harry Kane. as we watch his game. I'm being careful not to use any of these words. We watch his game over the last, say, 3 seasons. The first time when he sort of broke into that Spurs team and was scoring a bunch of goals, people kept saying, "Oh, this kid's in good form." And I think now we're getting towards a point where he's being linked with Real Madrid, where you might start saying he's becoming a world-class centre forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and I think
so.
It's not quite there where I would comfortably say that. So I'd almost maybe say that I'm thinking of this on the fly, but like maybe you have to achieve something at a really high level to be called world class. Like Harry Kane has to go and be top scorer at the World Cup, then we can start talking about him as maybe a world class player.
Yes.
Till then, he's just a London boy in very good form.
That I want to add that too, though. I think that's part of it as well, the London aspect of that. And I think about Gareth Bale when he was still playing with Spurs before he made that move to Real Madrid. There were all these conversations about, is he one of the best players in the world? Is he world class? Because that's what drives headlines, that's what drives papers. When he moves to Madrid, I feel like there's a dramatic downturn in the amount of coverage you get about Gareth Bale at Real Madrid, even though he's still like the same level talent player.
Yeah.
And again, that goes to media want you to be in the greatest run of form of your life because people want to hear about that and how it's happened, and people want you to be in a bad run of form because then you can write articles about that. So maybe, look no farther than Alvaro Morata.
So every aspect of form and world-classness is kind of amplified by the media because they want to talk about it.
I think so.
Like one bad game or 2 bad games becomes a story. Maybe another one to talk about, I know we need to move on in a second, but I think this one's interesting, is Cristiano Ronaldo. So we would all have agreed last season that Cristiano Ronaldo is a world-class player. This year, in La Liga at least, he's in very bad form.
Yep.
Right? So is he sort of dipping out of that world-class category, or is he just in bad form? And I would argue... Oh, you had an answer?
This is where we go back to my timeline of Cristiano Ronaldo has been such an amazing player for such a long amount of time that it will take much longer for him, same thing for Leo Messi, for me to say they're not world-class. They're not like one of the 2 best players in the world.
Yeah, I think it would take at least a whole season of bad form to start.
He's the second best player in the world, let's be real.
So, but it would take, especially right now, it would take a whole season of bad form to start talking about it like that. And then the other maybe category to add in here.
And maybe more. Because again, I think it has to
because he might just be tired.
Or it might be maybe Zidane lost some of that steam and that didn't work. Or maybe they changed tactics and then that didn't work, but then he moved to a new club. Like, I'm not talking about Ronaldo specifically here, but it can be so many factors that it's not necessarily the player.
Yes, there's too much focus on the individual player, right? There's more variables about what's around him and what else is going on in his life and, who he's playing against, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I think we've got to a really comprehensive answer there.
Hopefully.
I hope Phil Doucette agrees with us. Sorry, no, RJ Wilson. I looked at the wrong page. I hope RJ agrees with us.
I hope so too. I'm picturing empty headphones around the world. They'll let it run.
People have just pulled their headphones out, left their phone and walked away.
Slowly backed away from the phone, yes.
Phones are too expensive to do that.
Yeah.
We have one more question.
We do.
It applies directly to us. I'm really excited to talk about it. But first, today's show is sponsored by Woven T-shirts. I said to you before, we'll do a Woven ad. I forgot to wear one today. I looked at what I was wearing.
You're wearing a Woven
I'm wearing
shirt.
the first one I ever got. Yep. It's the white shirt with the blue Chevy on it. So woven.com, WOHVEN.com. I'm in charge of spelling it after your disaster last time out. Woven. They make T-shirts created by graphic designers. They do a large run so that you can get them for just $15 a month. They send it right to your door. The designs are always, I want to call them simple, elegant, kind of very like graphic-y, but not too busy. Very much my lane, right up my lane, right in my alley. So I wanted to have a go today at you and I.
Simple is your lane?
Simple kind of is my lane. Keep it simple.
All right.
I want us to have a go at maybe designing our own Woven T-shirt. What would you put on it? It's got to have that simple graphical element. You can't put too many piano keys on there.
No problem. I would say your shirt, not a great example of what I'm talking about, but I feel like a lot of Woven designs could double as the logos for national parks. Like, I think it's always like very simple, like modern takes on national parks.
Yeah, look, the one I was wearing last week was mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, kind of. It wasn't like obviously detailed mountains, but it was the outline of a mountain and it had that feel to it, right? It looked like Shenandoah.
So if I'm designing, there you go, exactly. So if I'm designing a shirt, I think it would have those sort of concepts that could easily be like, that's the new logo for Shenandoah National Park. So it's like a mountain, a moon, and a bicycle. Something
Very
like
that. Nice. The thing that immediately came to my head, and the design I keep hoping comes from Woven, maybe they're listening, is a bicycle. Right. I would love a really sort of graphically designed or simply designed bicycle where it's not like super detailed, like you can't see the brakes and the spokes and all that sort of stuff, but a nice bicycle design to match my car one.
I like it. I like it. You do need representation.
I do need representation, yeah.
Indeed.
More bicycle T-shirts.
Perfect.
If you would like to sign up for woven.com and get yourself a mystery T-shirt, because part of this is, unless they take one of our ideas, it's a mystery until you get it. But if you have good taste, you always approve when it arrives.
And I think for them to take one of our ideas, we have to actually design it and submit it. So probably not going to happen.
I've got Photoshop, just no design skills.
Yeah, those are kind of important.
Yeah. Woven.com.
But confidence, if you're in Retiform, Daryl, if you believe that you can design it, you can do it. WOHVEN.com. It's $15 a month for a graphic tee, $11 for a blank tee. I'd go graphic if I was you. You can get 25% off your first shirt with the discount code TSS 2018, TSS 2018, because that's the show you're listening to, and that's what year it is. TSS 2018 for 25% off. Link is in the show notes. Alrighty. Thank you to Woven for sponsoring today's show. Final sponsor of the day, which means time for our final listener question.
Who's reading it?
Todd Ito. I will read it, I think.
Because I got Phil and RJ's names mixed up on the last one.
Yeah,
so,
you can't
Thank you, RJ, for the form question. Thank you, Phil, for the Olympics versus Copa America question.
All right. Todd says, how dramatically do you think the game would change if soccer switched to the substitution rules used in basketball? Those rules would be you can substitute at any dead ball situation, so a throw and a free kick, something like that. Unlimited substitutions, although you would still be limited to the same number of bench players, that's 7. And once a player is subbed out, he or she can be subbed back in.
If only there was some decade-long experiment we could run here in Richmond to see how this works. Mm-hmm. Listeners, you can't see the piece of paper we printed the questions out on, but I put at the top, we are very well placed to answer this.
Yep.
Because here in our local Central Virginia Soccer Association, we play by these rules.
We do.
It's full 11 aside, centre ref, assistant refs. It's every possible FIFA rule with the exception of rolling subs, almost exactly as Todd has described here. The only difference is you can have more than 7 subs, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you can only sub on throw-ins and goal kicks, not free kicks. Yep. But basically the same concept. I think it works really well. I absolutely love it for our rec level.
I think you just threw in some differentiations.
I'm going to call it amateur, not rec. Rec makes it sound like less serious than it is. There are points on the line, and people will throw their bodies in front of shots.
But I think that the things that set it apart are key there, because you were just like, oh yeah, but you can't do it on free kicks or set pieces. Yeah, if you could do that, that changes the game considerably.
You have like set piece specialists come in,
or you have giant guys come in to handle the corner, or you have your larger lasses come in to handle a long throw, and then you can sub them right back off if you don't score that goal.
Wow. Now I'm imagining, so you win a free kick and the coach is like, all right, get the 7 Fellaini's in there and you fill the box. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's not how we do it, right? It's more like you get a 15-minute run and then you switch with the next guy, get 15 minutes and so on.
And I think that to do what I just described would require a very specific style of coaching if you did that on the professional level, because you would have to have people who knew exactly what their role was and not be frustrated. Because that is the thing for me.
That's the thing at our level.
Is that really, outside of like you are really, really gassed, no one wants to be substituted ever. Even if you're tired, if you've just made 200-yard runs, you might ask for a sub. But if somebody said, I guarantee if you made 200-yard runs and I said, Daryl, you want a sub? You'd be like, I'm okay. Like you'll ask for one occasionally, but nobody wants to be told you need to come off.
So, I mean, we should say full disclosure. We talked about our Richmond street soccer team yesterday. Yep. So we run the 11-a-side team in the league, and so that means we run the subs. Our experience with this is exactly what you just said, right? No one really wants to come off unless they're trying to set a good example of subbing. Or I've just realised I don't come off that much, but I think it's because I'm one of the only defenders. So I'm kind of doing everybody else a favour by playing centre back, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. I'm okay with that. So then, what would you say then?
In terms of it affecting the professional game, I would really enjoy it. I think, 'cause I think you get to see. There's sometimes I tune into a game and there's a player I don't see, or he only gets 1 minute. Remember Perry Kitchen getting 1 minute at the end of every US Men's National Team game? Yep. I think it would give you greater variety of getting to see players get some minutes on the field. But I think the other thing is that maybe, I'm going to talk myself out of it now, at the very top level, these guys are fit enough, they are trained to play 90 minutes. They don't necessarily need a break.
No, and in fact, the lack of a break, I think sometimes is what pushes people to that next level. Because if you are Anthony Martial and you're performing really well, and suddenly Alexis Sanchez is coming in, you've got to keep that level of competition up. But if you
won't be getting 10-minute spells.
Exactly. And I do also think that if you had those rolling substitutions, specifically at the professional level, the game gets way choppier. Because there is something to be said for, I know our friend Pav talks about this a lot, that you have to kind of get into the rhythm a little bit.
Yeah.
You have to get used to...
He says that because he doesn't want to get subbed.
Things can be two things.
Hey, Pav,
second usage. But I think it genuinely is the case that it takes a couple minutes, that if you're in this crazy... I remember this from my youth days, that like if you're in this crazy, hard-fought tournament game where you're both really going at it and you've been sitting out for 20 minutes and you sub in, if you're just like, hey guys, what are we doing? And everyone's been like throwing landmines at each other. That's not how that works. Throwing hand grenades at each other. Like, you are maybe not as dirty. You're maybe not as ready to go. And so you got to get a little bit of dirt on that uniform. And I think that matters.
I can see a Jurgen Klopp team being dangerously effective under this system. If everybody is primed and practiced and everyone knows the sort of angles to close down at, and you can constantly replace players every 10, 15, and you've always got everybody's energy bar is full for FIFA fans, you could have a very serious Jurgen Klopp pressing system that would be almost impossible to escape.
Now what we're leaning towards, and maybe I'm in on suddenly, surprisingly, is...
We're going back and forth, aren't we?
To go personal experience again. What we do at Score, the indoor facility here, or more appropriately...
You about to give our tactics away?
Hockey. No. Is rolling substitutions literally, as in like line changes of not stoppage of play. Like you can just come on and come off.
Oh, because we do that indoor. Yeah,
that would be kind of fascinating because
then you're taking the risk.
And the only reason that I thought of that is because that's where Liverpool, I feel like, would have it all like clockwork. I'm like, you're off, you're on. They know exactly when to switch. They know exactly how to transition.
But you could double up on, assuming you could leave from any exit. Like, imagine if like the team is under pressure on one side.
Oh no, you have to go out through the box.
But imagine my scenario where you could have the right back step off the field, and then you have like an extra left-sided player, and you can suddenly form an overload on one side. I've taken this too far, haven't I?
You've taken it way too far.
Yeah. You would need a door to come in and out.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Or just a box, like what you have in hockey, where you have to enter and exit through one like long space.
Right.
That works for me.
A lot of guys credited in a box in hockey.
Indeed.
I always feel like.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to Todd for that question. I'm not sure we answered it so much.
We did ramble for a while.
So much as rambled and riffed on it, but I enjoyed it.
I'm cool with it.
So that's good, right? All right.
Final segment on today's program.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a long one.
We have a lot of scouting reports. I know not everybody loves the scouting reports. From what I've heard, like some people love it, some people skip it. I think if you're one of the people that skip it, you are missing out on a lot of very good information about up-and-coming young Americans. There are definitely things we would talk about on the show, like certain American centre-back from Spurs who was on loan somewhere and is now on loan somewhere else. We would talk about that at the top of the show, but we know it's coming in the Scouting Network reports, so we hold it back for here. So get ready for a lot of information about young Americans. And yes, I have read the first one.
And with that in mind, Todd Brennan scouting Cameron Carter-Vickers, the 20-year-old English defender for Tottenham. Well, not anymore. CCV was sent on loan to Ipswich Town and immediately found his way into the starting lineup in their 1-1 draw with Bolton. Yay. According to the BBC, Ipswich Town looked to be losing current defender Tommy Smith to the Colorado Rapids, so it looks like CCV will keep his spot in the lineup, barring any howlers. Naming no specific incidents that happened for Sheffield United. Patrick Keeler is scouting Anthony Robinson, the 20-year-old American left-back on loan at Bolton from Everton. We want him in the US team. Patrick says Robinson went the distance for Bolton in that game against Ipswich. Robinson sent in a beautiful early cross right onto the head of a teammate, flicked it on for another teammate to finish for Bolton's only goal. The game ended 1-1 and Robinson was late recovering a back post run and his mark scored. The fact the passer basically ran through the centre of Bolton's defence mitigates how much blame can be laid on Robinson for allowing the goal. I'm really excited about Robinson. I have watched very little Bolton, which is to say no Bolton this season, but I feel like
I've watched a lot of highlights looking for Robinson.
Every one of Patrick's reports is always like, yeah, Anthony Robinson did have a howler in this moment or was responsible for this goal, but he was still the most highly rated player. Bolton not having a good season is what I'm taking away from that.
They're still, to give you the backstory, they're very much in financial trouble. Yeah.
There you go. Zach Lindquist scouting Jackson Ewell, 20-year-old American midfielder for San Jose.
The future.
Hidden in the draft, San Jose traded away Darwin Sarin, the man starting in front of Jackson Ewell. They traded him to Houston.
Happy days.
After signing a center back and freeing up a central defensive midfielder playing as a center back, Ewell should now have a better opportunity to start in San Jose's 3-5-2.
Quick preview of my interest in MLS for 2018. It's going to be to watch young Americans play. I'm going to be tuning in just to watch young Americans. It looks like I'll be watching some San Jose and not just for Tommy Thompson. Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson
He heard that
Hyndman.
and he said, I hope you know that.
If he plays, I'll watch. Richie Garcia is scouting Emerson Hyndman, the 21-year-old American midfielder at Bournemouth. This is a story we've been following. The Sun, never by the Sun, reported that current Rangers boss Graham Murty was interested in bringing Emerson back to Ibrox. But the Daily Echo, Scottish newspaper, denied the report, saying it was wide of the mark. Christian Dyer then reported there was a mutual interest between Emerson and MLS, and ESPN followed up to say that Eddie Howe, Bournemouth manager, would not deny that the club would move Emerson. But if it didn't happen, if it did happen, it will be late in the window. I mean, it's January 24th, he says, looking at his calendar. We've got about a week till we find out where Emerson Hyndman goes.
Indeed. Michael Thompson scouting Chris Gloucester, 17-year-old American left back.
A lot of stories about Chris Gloucester.
ESPN FC is reporting that Chris Gloucester is back on trial at Schalke again. He was reportedly there back around Thanksgiving. The sporting director of RBNY has said that Chris has been offered a homegrown deal and is still considering his options, but Michael feels optimistic, or feels that is optimistic thinking at best.
I'd be happy with either. Right? New York Red Bulls are a team that give American youngsters a chance. Schalke is a team where I'd love to just collect all the young Americans and then I can just buy a Schalke jersey. Scott Glack is scouting George Acosta, the 18-year-old American midfielder. Scott is sort of at a loss regarding what's going on with the youngest Acosta in the scouting network. After playing for Western FC Academy in Florida for many years, Costa played 3 games in North Carolina FC's U23s last summer. Since then, no club news can be found about him, and he is not listed on either club's roster currently. He turned 18 on January 9th, and Scott was hoping that might mean a move to Europe, but nothing yet. We have a quote from Travis Clark. Was this on Twitter? Quote, he was playing with Western FC at the DA showcase.
No, that was from a text. I texted Travis Clark and said, what's happening to George Acosta? That's what he answered. So
good to have contacts.
Yeah. Michael Curry scouting Haji Wright, 19-year-old American forward, on loan at Sandhausen from Schalke. Haji did not make the bench for the last 2 matches before the winter break. Prior to that, he was consistently getting 10 to 15 minutes at the end of matches. He did get time in Sandhausen's friendlies during the winter break, and Michael is hoping that the second half of the season goes better for Haji because he only has 1 goal so far this season.
Agreed. Colin Bish is scouting Eric Williamson, the 20-year-old American midfielder. Colin says, Williamson's homegrown player rights were traded from DC United to Portland in exchange for, deep breath, 100,000 in GAM for 2018, 100,000 in GAM in 2019. I thought one of those was TAM. A second-round pick in the 2020 Super Draft, a 2018 international roster spot, and 50% of any sell-on fees. Oh, MLS. Colin hopes this is a sign of how highly rated Eric is by New Timbers coach Giovanni Severesi.
Yep.
Taylor note.
Yeah, no, you can leave that off because this is when I thought that they had traded his homegrown player rights, DC, because that was what was initially reported. So at that time, I thought they were just trading the rights in case Williamson decided to play in Major League Soccer. Since then, he is signed with Portland. You can see him wearing a Portland shirt, so he will be playing for Portland.
I was really hoping we'd have a Williamson, Durkin, Knaus, Harks, young US midfield at DC United.
He was not hoping for that.
I guess if it seems like he's going to play at Portland, that's where he should go.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Up next?
Olaf Danelius scouting Erdal Rakip, 21-year-old Swedish midfielder on loan at Crystal Palace from Benfica. Following the expiration of his contract with Malmo, Rakip signed for Benfica and was immediately sent on loan to Crystal Palace with a reported buyout clause of 10 million euros.
Okay. Rebecca Sitter is scouting Jalen Howell, the 18-year-old American midfielder for Real Colorado Academy and the US Under-20s women's national team. Howell recorded an assist in the U20 women's team's 2-0 victory over Nicaragua in their first game of the CONCACAF Championship tournament, which doubles as U20 World Cup qualifying. She played aggressively, winning multiple 50-50 balls, one of which led to the second goal of the match. She then scored the late winner in America's 2-1 win over Jamaica in their second game. Jamaica had equalised in the 88th before Jalen scored in the 89th. I saw this goal.
That'll work. Ira Jersey scouting Alexis Sanchez, 18-year-old American forward for UCLA. Ashley saw action in all 3 group stage matches in the CONCACAF U20 Championships, which saw the U.S. win out against Mexico, Jamaica, and Nicaragua. I'm assuming that is. Ashley scored in the 39th minute for what turned out to be the game winner against El Tri in the final group stage match Tuesday afternoon. Overall, she played well, showing some smart runs and passing. One more win in either the semifinal or the consolation game, and the U.S. is guaranteed a spot in the U20 World Cup later this year. Given this final qualifier, or this final game is in Trinidad and Tobago, Ira Jersey is not taking anything for granted.
I do know they play Haiti in the semi, so keep an eye out for that result. Jonas Lehmann-Karp is scouting Matt Miazga. Oh no, I know what's coming, I think. 22-year-old American defender for Vitesse. You may have seen him on Twitter recently. Jonas says, Matt didn't feature in last Tuesday's 1-0 win over Sparta as he was sitting out the game due to yellow card accumulation. Matt then went the full 90 in Saturday's 1-1 draw against Heerenveen. But we may not see him again for a few games. During the game, Matt walked over to Heerenveen defender Denzel Dumfries and then, depending on your viewpoint, either 1, aggressively helped Dumfries scratch an itch you don't normally scratch in public, or 2, maliciously pinched Dumfries' Royal Cruyffs a few times in succession.
That's outstanding.
The refs didn't catch it, but the cameras did, so look for some retroactive discipline coming Matt Miazga's way.
Update on that, Brian Sheretta retweeted a Dutch source who confirmed that Matt Miazga will face no retroactive punishment.
He got away with it.
He got away with it.
Wow, we have a sneaky defender in Matt
Maybe
Miazga.
it really was just scratching that itch.
I'm sure that was the situation. You're up next.
Jeff and Sam Huffman scouting Mukwele Akele, the 21-year-old American attacker for Villarreal C.
I feel like we get further into the alphabet every time we get a report from Mukwele.
A little bit. Mukwele started, but was subbed out of a pair of wins for Villarreal C, to begin 2018, with the team reaching 4 straight wins following his return from injury. It's great that he is now starting regularly for the club, but 2018 will be a critical year for Mukwele.
Yes.
He turned 21 on January 18th, and he is now among the oldest players on the Villarreal C squad. That age range is usually 18 to 21. Seems like it is this year or never for a move up the ladder for Mukwele.
Or a move somewhere else.
Or that.
Chris Bentley is scouting Donny van der Beek, the 20-year-old Dutch forward for Ajax. Ajax have a ton of talented young players. Donny has been strongly linked with a move to Dortmund, Chris says, and Tottenham have also recently come into the frame. The Dutchman has scored 8 goals in all competitions for an Ajax side that struggled to find its form. There's that word.
Mm-hmm. Ran Conger scouting Rafik Zaknini, the 20-year-old winger for Fiorentina. Rafik hasn't been getting any minutes this season, and it was rumored that he would be leaving the club in January. However, his agent has come out and categorically denied these rumors, saying he won't be leaving, even on loan, and will be with the club until he becomes a first-team regular.
Jeff Markman is scouting Reece Nelson, the 18-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Jeff says that worrying rumours are beginning to emerge that Nelson, who's out of contract this summer, is not close to signing an extension, and there are likely fabricated reports of interest from Real Madrid and PSG. He has a good agent.
Always.
He has a good agent.
Yep.
This unnerving chatter comes on the heels of a return to form for Nelson, who notched 2 assists in Arsenal's U23's 4-0 win over Manchester United. Was he up against on a Sunday in that game? Nelson has been in the Arsenal setup since he was 9, and losing him on the cusp of his breakthrough will be a real failure for Arsenal management. They're not losing him to Real Madrid or PSG.
We would hope not.
No.
We would hope not. Jeff Markman scouting Jeff Ryan Adelaide, 19-year-old French midfielder for Arsenal. The Jeff put an exclamation point on his recovery from the latest in a long series of injuries, scoring the opening goal for the Arsenal U23s in that 4-0 win over Man United. Arsenal youth expert George Bird praised the long overdue performance from Ryan Adelaide, noting his major impact in the middle of the field.
Christian Dapric is scouting Maxime Lopez, 20-year-old French midfielder for Marseille. Maxime started for the first time since December 7th, played the full 90 against Caen. He drew 2 free kicks, but also committed 2 fouls. Most notably, Lopez fell in the penalty area and was immediately called the French word for W*NKER.
Nothing good. Mike Wills scouting Julian Brandt, the 21-year-old German attacking midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen, soon to be of Bayern Munich. I don't know if that's true. I just feel like every time we have a young German player, we may as well soon to be for Bayern Munich. TSS Scouting Network synergy strikes again as Julian notched an assist on a Leon Bailey backheel goal from the penalty spot in Bayer Leverkusen's 4-1 away win at Hoffenheim this weekend. Rumors continue to swirl about Julian's future, with clubs like Bayern Munich, AC Milan, Liverpool, and Barcelona showing interest in paying his reported €12.5 million release clause this summer.
So it wasn't a backheel penalty kick, right? It was a backheel from the penalty spot.
Yes,
yeah,
I think
okay.
So. I read that a number of times before deciding that no, it wasn't a backheel penalty.
Dylan Virch is scouting Kai Havertz. It's not a scouting report until we got Kai Havertz, the 18-year-old German attacking midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen. Kai started and ended the game on the bench in that game against Hoffenheim. It was the first game in quite a while that Kai didn't start and play the full 90, but Dylan is choosing not to read anything into that. I like your optimism, Dylan. He's a teenager.
I like George Nisbet, yes. I like George Nisbet scouting Pablo Mofeo, the 20-year-old Spanish winger/defender on loan at Girona from Manchester City. I like him because it seems like maybe there wasn't much going on. So, Mufeo sat on the bench for Girona FC during their games against Atletico Madrid and Las Palmas.
There we go. Julie Nishimura Jensen, hey Julie, is scouting Alen Halilovic, the 21-year-old Croatian midfielder on loan at Las Palmas from Barcelona. Julie says Halilovic returned from ankle surgery on January 9th, has received minutes in both La Liga and Copa del Rey games. It appears that Paco Gémez, the Las Palmas manager, third one this season, rates him more highly than Paco Ayesteren, the previous manager. Unfortunately, Las Palmas is second from bottom, or as Darryl would say, second bottom, in La Liga, and was eliminated in the Copa del Rey round of 16. See, proof that British English is more succinct than American English.
This is true. This is very true. You got to thank everybody.
Thank you to everybody for their scouting reports today.
Correct
if you'd like to join the TSS Scouting Network, it's totalsoccershow.com/join. Thank you to our sponsors again, Health IQ and Woven. Taylor Rockwell just remains to say thank you over there, sir, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you over there, sir.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll be back with another show tomorrow.
Slice it.